At our family reunion, my stepsister casually mentioned how attractive my boyfriend is, then smirked. When I got upset, my parents defended her, told me to stop overreacting, and accused me of ruining the gathering. Hello Reddit, I never imagined I'd find myself writing a post like this, but here I am. What happened at a recent family reunion left me feeling betrayed, confused, and humiliated. It started with a casual comment that spiraled into something much darker, involving my stepsister, my boyfriend, and, most shockingly, my own parents. I'm still trying to process it all, but I need to get it off my chest. Let me set the stage. I'm in my mid-20s, and I've been with my boyfriend for almost 3 years. We've had our ups and downs, like any couple, but things were good between us. My family is complicated. My parents are loving but have always treated my stepsister differently. She's a few years older than me, and while I've never had a close bond with her, I've tried to be cordial. She's the type who effortlessly gets attention, people naturally gravitate toward her, and she enjoys that power. It was a typical family reunion, my parents' backyard, extended family, and my boyfriend and I joining in. Everything seemed normal at first. We were talking, laughing, and enjoying the sunny day. But things shifted when my stepsister joined our table, and I couldn't have predicted what was coming. She casually turned to my boyfriend and said, "Wow, boyfriend's name. You're really so attractive. How did you end up with my name when there are so many girls here?" Her tone was light, almost playful, but there was something in the way she said it that made the air feel thick. My boyfriend awkwardly muttered something like, thanks, but it didn't feel like enough to brush off what had just been said. I sat there stunned, not sure how to react. Was this a compliment? Or was she flirting with him? Her words weren't innocent. They carried an edge that I couldn't ignore. My stomach twisted, and I could feel a wave of discomfort rising within me. I tried to laugh it off but failed. It didn't sit right. I finally managed to say, "That's a weird thing to say." My voice came out shakier than I expected, but I was trying to stay calm. I didn't want to escalate things, but the more I thought about it, the more it felt like I had to address it. She smirked at me, clearly aware of the tension she'd caused. And I hated it. Then, she did something that made everything worse. "Oh, come on. It's just a compliment. Don't take it so seriously," she said, dismissing my discomfort as if it was nothing. I could feel my anger building. She wasn't just being friendly. She was testing boundaries, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. No one else seemed to notice. My boyfriend looked uncomfortable, but he didn't speak up. My cousins exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of whether to intervene. My parents were sitting nearby, but they weren't paying attention. It felt like I was the only one who understood what was happening. This wasn't some harmless comment, it was a power play. She was seeing how far she could push me in front of everyone. I stood up, my heart racing. I couldn't just sit there and let her keep disrespecting me. "What's your point, stepsister's name?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Her smirk didn't fade. "Nothing. Just pointing out the obvious." I repeated, "The obvious?" My voice was thick with emotion. "That you think it's okay to flirt with my boyfriend in front of me? That you think I'm too naive to see what you're doing?" She just laughed. "I wasn't flirting. You're overreacting." I wasn't overreacting. I knew exactly what was happening, and I wasn't going to let her minimize it. I turned to my boyfriend, hoping he would speak up, but he didn't. He just sat there, looking uncomfortable, unsure of what to do. He didn't get it. And in that moment, I realized I was alone in this. That's when my parents stepped in. But instead of backing me up, they sided with her. "You're overreacting," my mom said. She was just being friendly. "Relax." "Yeah," my dad added, "it's no big deal. Don't make a scene. We're here to have fun, not argue." I couldn't believe it. How could they not see that my stepsister had crossed a line? How could they defend her? The hurt I felt quickly turned into something worse, betrayal. They weren't just dismissing my feelings, they were completely ignoring the situation. I tried to calm myself, but it was hard. The words stung too much. I whispered, "She was disrespecting me, and you're treating it like nothing?" But they didn't care. "You're ruining the day," my mom said. shaking her head. We're all here to have a good time, not make things uncomfortable. That was it. I realized I was alone in this. No one saw what had happened. My boyfriend remained silent, and my parents defended her, acting like I was the one who was out of line. I stood there, feeling humiliated. I had no idea how to fix this. My world felt like it was crumbling around me, and there was nothing I could do. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My parents had sided with her, dismissed my feelings, and told me I was overreacting. But what hurt the most was the complete lack of empathy, especially from my boyfriend. I had expected him to defend me, to acknowledge how uncomfortable and disrespectful my stepsister had been. Instead, he sat there, silent, avoiding my gaze as if none of this mattered. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The weight of his inaction was heavy, suffocating. I turned to my parents, my voice shaking with frustration. "How can you not see what she's doing?" I asked, but they only shook their heads, acting like I was the problem. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," my mom said, her voice tinged with annoyance. "It's just a comment. Stop ruining the reunion." My dad added, "This isn't the time for a scene. Everyone is here to have fun." The words stung more than I expected. My own parents, the people I thought would have my back, were brushing off something I couldn't ignore. They were treating me like the unreasonable one, as if my feelings didn't matter. I felt my heart drop. The betrayal wasn't just from my stepsister, it was from the people who were supposed to protect me. But it didn't stop there. My boyfriend, who I thought would at least have my back in the situation, just looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting around the table. He didn't step in. He didn't say a word. The silence between us grew louder, heavier. And with every passing second, my frustration and disbelief deepened. "Are you seriously going to sit there and not say anything?" I asked him, my voice barely above a whisper, but sharp enough to cut through the tension. He flinched, but all he did was mumble something about not wanting to make things worse. I was done trying to be diplomatic. "How could you not say anything? She's practically hitting on you, and you're just going to sit there like nothing's wrong." He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "I didn't think it was a big deal." "A big deal," I repeated, feeling my face flush with a mixture of anger and humiliation. "How is it not a big deal that she's making moves on my boyfriend in front of me?" The table went quiet. My stepsister, that damn smirk still plastered on her face, watched the whole thing unfold, clearly enjoying the chaos she'd stirred. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even pretending to be. The way she looked at me now felt like victory. As if she had won something, maybe not my boyfriend, but at least my dignity. My parents still didn't intervene. They were too busy pretending like nothing was wrong, caught up in keeping the peace at all costs. It felt suffocating. "What's going on here, my name?" my mom asked, her tone dismissive. "Why are you making this a scene?" I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but every word that left my mouth felt like it was being suffocated by the overwhelming tension. "I'm not making a scene. I'm just asking for a little respect." My dad sighed, clearly irritated. "We're supposed to be having a good time. Can't you just drop it?" I felt like I was losing my grip on everything. This wasn't just about a comment anymore, it was about my own worth. If they couldn't even see the disrespect, how was I supposed to keep pretending everything was okay? In the midst of all of this, my boyfriend turned to my stepsister. "Hey, stepsister's name, can we maybe ease off a bit?" His words were so weak, so uncertain. He wasn't even standing up for me the way I needed him to. But my stepsister only smirked again. "It's just a compliment, no harm done." The way she said it made me feel small. Made me feel like I was in the wrong for even being upset. I knew, in that moment, that my boyfriend didn't fully understand why I was hurt. He had brushed it off like it was nothing. And my parents were too focused on maintaining a false sense of harmony to see the emotional toll this was taking on me. I stood up abruptly, the air between us heavy and suffocating. "I'm done," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "If no one else is going to care, then I'll just go. I don't need to be here for this." I turned to leave, but something inside me knew it wouldn't change anything. They wouldn't see my side, and nothing I said would make them understand the gravity of the situation. My own boyfriend hadn't backed me up. My parents were defending her. I felt like an outsider in my own life. As I walked away from the table, I could hear the murmurs behind me, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I needed space. I needed to breathe. But deep down, I knew I'd never be able to look at this reunion the same way again. The worst part? I didn't know how to face any of them again after what had just happened. I left the table, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed to get away from the situation, but even as I walked through the yard, my mind was racing. What had just happened? How could my parents, the people I trusted most, side with my stepsister and tell me I was overreacting? And why hadn't my boyfriend stood up for me? The silence in the air was suffocating. I stood near the edge of the yard, trying to calm myself down. But I couldn't. The anger, humiliation, and confusion were building, and it felt like I couldn't breathe. I was shaking, and I could still hear my mom's words echoing in my head. Stop ruining the reunion. I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell at everyone who didn't see what was happening, who didn't understand how much this hurt me. My stepsister had made it clear that she wasn't afraid to test boundaries, and my boyfriend hadn't even tried to protect me. I leaned against the fence, trying to hold back tears. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't even have to look to know it was my boyfriend, trying to text me or call. I didn't want to talk to him right now. I couldn't. Then I saw him. My boyfriend was walking toward me, his expression a mix of guilt and frustration. He stopped a few feet away, unsure of how to approach me. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low, almost too cautious. I looked at him, feeling the anger flare up inside me again. "Talk?" I repeated, my voice trembling. "What is there to talk about? You didn't even defend me. You sat there and let her make me feel like I was crazy. And now you want to talk?" His eyes widened. "I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to?" I cut him off. "You didn't mean to let my stepsister flirt with you in front of me? You didn't mean to sit there, doing nothing, while she disrespected me." "I didn't know what to say," he said, running a hand through his hair. "It wasn't like she what? Wasn't flirting with you." I felt my frustration boil over. "It was so obvious, and you didn't even care. You just let it happen." "I care, my name," he said, his voice desperate. "I didn't know how to handle it. You know I didn't want to upset you." "Upset me?" I repeated, laughing bitterly. "Is that what this is about? You didn't want to upset me? Well, guess what? You did. You upset me when you chose to stay silent." There was a long pause. He stared at me, and I could see the guilt in his eyes, but it didn't change anything. His inaction had already spoken louder than any words. "I don't know what you want me to do," he said quietly. "I never meant to hurt you." "Then why didn't you stand up for me?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Why didn't you say anything when my stepsister was being so disrespectful?" He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. His silence was all the answer I needed. I shook my head, feeling a wave of disappointment wash over me. "I need space. I need to think about everything." "Please, don't say that," he pleaded. "We can work this out." But I wasn't sure if we could anymore. As much as I cared for him, I couldn't ignore the fact that he didn't support me when it mattered most. In that moment, I realized that things weren't as simple as they had once been. I turned away from him, heading toward the car. I didn't care if I looked dramatic. I didn't care if they all thought I was overreacting. I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine. Not anymore. I didn't know where to go or what to do. I just knew that I couldn't be around anyone who was willing to excuse my stepsister's behavior. And I certainly couldn't stay in a relationship where my feelings were dismissed. When I finally got into the car, I looked at my phone, seeing dozens of texts and missed calls from my boyfriend, but I ignored them all. I needed space to clear my head and figure out what I wanted. I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive him or anyone for what had happened. The drive home was a blur. I wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't go back to that family dynamic. Not with the way things had played out. And as for my boyfriend, I didn't know if we could move past this. I wasn't sure I wanted to anymore. By the time I got home, I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and still angry. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. Not when my own family and my boyfriend had failed me when I needed them most. The aftermath of that day wasn't just about my stepsister's comments. It was about how everyone, my family, my boyfriend, chose to handle it. Or rather, how they chose not to handle it. I had to face the uncomfortable truth. I wasn't as important to them as I had believed. And that realization was harder to swallow than any words my stepsister could have said. I didn't know what would happen next. All I knew was that I had to start looking out for myself because no one else was going to do it for me.